Plants are an essential way to create an inviting and dynamic space. Hi everyone, it's Carol from Discover Interior Design and I'm so glad you're here. Well, in this video we're talking about how to decorate with plants and what to think about when we're thinking of different locations and what to keep in mind when we do eventually go out and look for plants. So let's get started with the first part. The first thing to think about is really where you want to place a plant or different locations in a room where you want to place plants. And a couple different areas that you can keep in mind include where you want to have plants on the floor, so floor plants. And from a design perspective, there are a couple really cool things that floor plants can add to our room. One of them is that it can create a focal area. So maybe you have a blank area or an empty space somewhere in your room, and just by adding a floor plant, which is usually larger, will help to kind of grab our attention and lead our eye in that direction. Whether it's in a prominent area, maybe by your front door, and it's the first thing that you see when you come into your home, or maybe it's in a room and where you see that plant and it kind of leads you and draws you into that room. And floor plants can also kind of create the illusion that maybe a room is taller than it is. So just because a floor plant usually has more height to it, that helps to maybe give us a sense that a room is maybe a little larger or a little taller than it is. And also it's a nice way to add variety to a room so that maybe not all the plants are at the same level. So you have different levels going on so that our eye moves around the space and enjoys seeing these plants and different types of plants at different levels. And when you want to find a floor plant for a certain area in your room, one thing you want to think about is what form you want that plant to have. And form is just the three-dimensional shape of something. Sometimes a floor plant can be very upright. It's almost like an architectural feature in a room, like almost like having columns in a room. Or a floor plant can be maybe even wider, kind of sprawling, or maybe a combination. And with a floor plant, you may want to take some measurements. Maybe you need to find out how much space, overall space that you have in that area. Or maybe you need to find out maybe the ceiling height. So just kind of take a look at your space and if there are any measurements that you need to take to go forward with that so you'll know what size of plant to buy. So use your designer's eye to look at that floor space where you want to put that plant and what would kind of make sense in that area. And another location where you may have plants would be on tabletops or on a counter or on a windowsill or even on shelves or cabinets. And this could be part of an arrangement. Maybe it's part of a grouping on a table where you have other things on that table, other accessories and other items, and it'll become part of that arrangement. And having plants on different tabletops or counters or different flat areas at different heights throughout your room helps to create variety, helps our eyes to have some movement where we kind of look at plants at different levels throughout the room, and that creates kind of a dynamic space. When you choose a plant, say like a vine, that's an interesting thing to notice just from a design perspective, because if you have a vine plant maybe on top of a shelf or high up on a cabinet and it's kind of trailing and cascading vertically down into the room or even across that piece of shelving or furniture, it creates some movement. It leads our eyes horizontally or vertically. So it's kind of a neat thing to create that effect of movement in the room. And if you want to group plants on a table or on a countertop, it's nice to create some repetition. Maybe you are repeating the same type of form or maybe even the same type of container, something that kind of ties everything together. Some places where you may want to take some measurements would include if you want to have a plant part of an arrangement, a grouping on a table, or maybe on a windowsill. You'll need to find out what is the depth of that windowsill to know what size of container to put on there. Or maybe even on a fireplace mantle. You'll want to measure the width of that fireplace mantle, but more importantly, the depth, so you know what size of container will fit on that mantle. And when you are looking at these different locations in your room where you want to have a tabletop or a countertop type of plant, think of the type of plant that would make sense there. Do you want to have a trailing vine on top of your high shelves or your wall shelf? Or do you want something that's maybe a little bit more sprawling or more rounded? Just use your designer's eye to think about what shapes and forms and types of plants would make sense in those locations. And another area in your room where you may want to have plants would be hanging from the ceiling. Maybe you just bought this neat hanger, or maybe you even made your own macrame hanger and you want to have a cool location where you can hang that plant. You'll want to keep in mind that hanging planters actually create focal areas because they're going to really draw our attention to that hanger and the design of the hanger, as well as the plant that you have in there. And the other thing that's kind of cool about hanging plants from your ceiling is that it helps to create the sense of height, the illusion that maybe your room is taller than it is. And basic measurements that you'd want to take is just to find out what size of planter will fit in that hanger. So when you have this really neat hanger and you have a location of where you want to hang a plant, think of the type of plant that you could place in that hanger. It could be a trailing type of plant, like a vine, but it also could be almost like a fountain shape plant, like a fern or something like that. So just kind of think about that. If you want something that kind of trails and emphasizes those vertical lines, or something that's more sprawling that kind of breaks up that verticalness of the plant hanger itself. And while you're thinking about the location of where you like to have different plants and the types of plants that may fit in those areas, take a notice of what type of lighting you have in that room, because that's really essential to knowing what type of plant will thrive in that area or that room. And one thing to notice is when you have natural light during the day, is that room pretty bright and light, or is it a little bit of a lower light level? And in general, when you have a room that has south or east or west facing windows, you're going to have a brighter room. Whereas if you have a room that has a north facing window, that is going to have maybe more even light, but maybe a little bit lower level of light. And of course, all of this depends upon what's going on during the day and what season it is, because lighting, of course, changes daily as well as seasonally. And in general, rooms will have different types of natural lighting in a room, depending on different locations in the room. So you may have a south-facing window where you have this really nice light coming in near the window, but by the time you get over to the other side of the room, it may be much lower light. So you would want to think about, say, if you wanted to place a plant in your entryway, but it's not receiving a lot of natural light, then you'd want to look for a plant that will work in lower light compared to a plant that you could put near your window or even on the windowsill that loves really direct and bright light. So when you're looking at plants for different locations in your room, you'd want to keep in mind that each of those plants may have different lighting requirements. And another thing to keep in mind to make sure that your plants thrive and that you're happy with your plants is to make sure you choose plants that kind of match your lifestyle. So if you are a super busy person, you may want a plant that is low maintenance or easy to grow and easy to care for, that doesn't have a lot of requirements. So refer to those resources that I am leaving in this video's description to find out more information about lighting conditions and humidity and watering and if they are suitable for households with pets. All of that stuff is super important to make sure that you're happy with the plant and that the plant is happy too. And the other part that's fun about having plants in your home is thinking about the container that you're going to put them in. And have some fun with this. This is where you can think about color or materials and textures and your design style. And when you're thinking about color, do you like to have contrast where you want to have kind of contrasting colors with what's going on in your plant? Or maybe you have a flowering plant and you want to choose a container that will be in that similar color as the flower, or something similar to the colors of the greens that are going on in the plant. Or do you want to have just something more neutral and use neutral colors? Or do you want to have a color that will kind of go away? Plant will be the focal area. So just kind of keep all those things in mind and have some fun. And also just kind of think outside the box. Think of using containers that maybe were used for something else. So where you could repurpose maybe a cookie jar or find something at a thrift store or a vintage shop where that could be reused as a container for your plant. You can even go take some pottery classes and make your own containers. And another thing that you could think about doing is going to one of those pottery studios where they've already made the containers. And what you get to do is paint on different colors of glazes, and then they'll fire it for you, and then you'll have a container ready to go for your new plant. So I'd love to find out from you what your favorite plants are in your home and how you decided where to place them and what types of plants that you bought. And if you have any ideas for us on maybe kind of low maintenance, easy to grow plants. So please share your ideas in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.